Okay, well, it is Sunday morning. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Blue Heinz Garage. We're going to work on this e-brake assembly one more time. You see, I got all this back together. Well, you guess what? The first thing I'm going to do this morning is take probably almost all of it back apart. Not hollow out the differential, but remove the wheels and the brake drums for sure. And I'll show you what I'm thinking. When I put this all back together yesterday and started getting into the e-brake thing, and came to realize that I believe the cables going to the wheels need to be slightly modified, and I'll show you that when I get the brake drum off, because I can better explain at that point. Okay, well, I took it apart, shortened those two little springs that are inside the brake drum that attach to that linkage that expands the brakes when you apply the e-brake. Took about a ½ inch out of those two springs, each one. So it goes through the drum now a lot straighter. It doesn't have kind of a bulge in it or whatever. I don't think that made a lot of difference. Right now I have them, it's locked. I've got a ratchet strap pulling on that. You can see it right there. And I got a little leverage advantage with that piece of tubing. It's pulling, the strap is pulling on the arm about 2 inches lower than the end of the arm. And there's a lot of tension on that strap. So two things. I think the cable is necessary. The second cable is necessary. Like I said, there's a lot of tension on that strap before it locks the brakes. At least that's my impression. That system just takes a lot of tension before it's putting enough pressure on those shoes, the mechanical pressure on those shoes to lock the drum. At any rate, so I think what I'm going to do is extend the arm. I'll cut it off close to the shaft, the pivot shaft, and I'll add about a 2-inch piece in there so that it makes the bottom 2 inches lower. And I still won't be hanging down lower than anything else. The gas tank's probably the lowest thing for road clearance on this vehicle, and that's what did I measure? I measured like from that shaft. I think I measured from that shaft to the bottom of the shaft to the bottom of those arms. And if I extend this arm 2 inches, it's going to be about 7 inches below that shaft. The tank is about 9.5 below that shaft, if not 10. So I won't be adding anything that will scrub, you know what I mean, any lower than anything else. So that's what I think I'm going to do. I'm going to go with the two cables, complete that idea, extend the shaft, extend the little area a few inches. In other words, where the two cable jackets end, I need to extend that down about 2 inches so that it's in line with the bottom of that lever, that arm. So that's kind of the plan at this point. I got to climb up there on top of the loft now and dig out all the hardware, the cables and the clevises and all that shit that I bought from Low Car when I was last working on this, and get familiar with all of that stuff. So anyway, later, for now, show you more when there's more to show. Wow, I have forgotten what a pain it is to do this laying on your back. since we built this garage and put the lift in. This is what we're starting with on this cross shaft that pulls the e-brake cable, or the e-brake cable pulls this cross shaft, which applies that tension to the brake shoes, the rear shoes. And this is what we're starting with. You see that lever right there that's in the middle of your picture. I want to extend that down so that you see the two levers, or the two arms, are the same length. And the center one is the one that the handbrake or e-brake handle pulls against to apply tension to the cables going into the brake shoes. I want to give that some advantage, leverage advantage. So what I'm going to do with that, what I'm attempting to do with that, is to extend it, make it longer. I want to make it roughly 2.5 inches longer, so that the arm on the right is roughly, I just measured it, 5 3/4, I think it was. Roughly 5.5 inches from the center of the cross shaft to the center of the eyelet that the clevis pin goes through. I think is roughly 5.5. The other one is the same length. The center one, the main one, is the same length. I want to extend that like 2.5 inches. So I want to increase the leverage on the main arm so that it's like 50% longer than the one that it's pulling. Give it a little more advantage. In order to do that, I obviously need to take this all apart, this cross shaft apart. You see it's got sleeves, a center shaft, set screws, and the set screws go in from both sides. There's 4 set screws going into that center shaft from this side, and on the opposite side there's 4 also. So there's a total of 8 on each. Well, there's a total of 8 on the center one. There's 4 on the end ones. And I have to figure out how this thing comes apart, because you see it's sandwiched between the frame rails. Goes through those, I can never remember the name of that rubber stuff. It's not rubber. That suspension, those suspension grommets. What I'm using there is the things you use on like the end of a 4-bar or something. And that's what locates the cross shaft. And I've got those bushings in there. The cross shaft, I want to say, is 3/4 inch. It's whatever size you use on that suspension stuff. So I have to figure out how to get this apart. I built this 25 years ago. I don't remember. I'm sure the shaft has to go sideways, and it must go sideways just enough to get the centerpiece, to get out of the centerpiece, or something like that. I'll have to figure that out, remember how that was designed. It's kind of tricky at this point. And like I say, laying on your back doesn't help much. I don't have much room to turn around or do anything under there. So anyway, here we are. See ya. Okay, well, you can see here, figured out how to get it apart. And since I got it apart, I took it over to the wire wheel and cleaned all the corrosion off of it. You see how the shaft's all corroded, got surface rust on it, and the cross shaft, the one that's taken apart there, is all clean because I wire wheeled the whole thing and all the arms. At any rate, the key to getting this apart is you see where it's separated right there. That's where the main arm goes that pulls from the handbrake lever inside the car. The key to getting that apart, since that shaft goes side to side and is bound in by the frame, the key to getting it apart is that center support, which actually bolts to the top of the drive shaft hoop. Once you remove the 2 bolts on that center support, you could slide it to one side, and then the center arm can slide over to allow the shaft to separate, at which point you can rotate those mounts on the 2 sides, and pull the shaft out. You know, take the arms off the ends with the set screws, remove the set screws, take the arms off the ends, and pull the shaft out of all the supports. Those supports, as you can see, are 4-bar ends. They're the same as the end on the 4-bar. You see, with a thread and the microflex bushing in them, and that's what I've used. I used the shaft, the same dimension as the 4-bar. I think it's 3/4 of an inch in diameter, and like I say, with the microflex bushings. So I think it's pretty sturdy. I think it'll work well once I get it properly engineered. So what I'm doing today as the next step is I want to increase the length of that arm by 2.5 inches. I want to make the arm 1.5 times as long as the ones that it's pulling, to give it some leverage, some advantage. So you see what I'm doing here. I brought the T-square out, and I brought the other mechanical drawing stuff out, and a little drawing board, and I'm going to use file folder as paper, and I'm going to try and draw this out so that I can modify it. I want to make it 2.5 inches longer, and I also want to clock it differently. It won't stand up on its own. I want to clock it so that it goes to the left. The pin where the clevis goes, the new location I want to be about 2 inches to the left of where it is now. So I'm going to cut this up here where it's straight coming off of the round shaft. Hard to do this. See that little straight section? I'm going to make a cut through it right there, and I'm going to extend it at that point. So I'm going to draw it all out full size so I can map out the shape of the extension piece, and I can also map out the bottom dimension where this clevis pin goes, and lower that 2.5 inches and move it to the left. Did I say right? Move it to the left here 2 inches. So I'm going to lay all that out on this file folder, because I can cut up the file folder and use it as patterns. Okay, so like I said, I'm drawing this out full size. Anyway, here goes, and I'll show you what I end up with. Well, there's the mock-up of the revised linkage. You see the Allen wrench is still in the set screw. So the arm is longer, and the not the anchor, but the mount on the ends of the cable is adapted to that longer arm. I made that longer too. You see how it hangs down. So this has got to go over to Scott's house. I'm going to leave here in a few minutes, because right now the arm is tacked to the collar that's on the shaft, and the little cable bracket has to have some gussets welded to it on the sides. The sides you can't see, the inside, because you see how it's right now it's just an angle, and the holes are 2.5 inches roughly away from the mount. So I want to stiffen that up. It's 1/8 inch material. I want to stiffen that up. So I made two gussets, one for each side. I'll show you that after it's welded. So anyway, so far so good. Later. Well, hello there. Welcome back. Well, here it is. It's a little past 9:30 p.m. Saturday, September 17th, and I'm finally done with this e-brake modification. You see, there is now 2 cables actuating the e-brake.
and it is a button that I wasn't supposed to hit. It isn't moving. It's tight. It's locked. So there it is. When the handbrake, when the lever is straight up, you can use that as an emergency brake. There's the linkage down there. Okay. Quite a chore. Surprised me for sure. But, so you see I lengthened that arm. Took the shaft all apart. You saw that. Took the shaft all apart. Put it all back together. Put some silicone grease in those urethane bushings to try to get some of the friction out of there. So it's not that hard to operate at this point. It works real good. I think I'm much happier with it than I remember. I know I modified it because I recall when you did put the brake on, it would, I think it would lock the wheels, but boy, you had a pull on it. Felt like you were stretching that 1/8" cable. As it turns out now, as it operates now, it feels real secure. It doesn't feel like you're stressing anything. So here you go. That's as tight as it was. And so that was one hand. It was standing on the outside of the truck. It was pretty easy to pull. So I'm sure when you're sitting there, it's not going to be hard at all. So like I said, that ain't moving. I'm pushing on that. It ain't moving. The other wheel, if you push hard enough, will turn. So there must be one click difference on the brake adjustment. You know how you try, especially with this one here with the 4-bar bracket right in front of the adjustment hole. It's not easy to adjust the brakes. So I have to, and these are old shoes. Drums aren't turned. They got to be, that all has to be done. I cleaned the shoes. I sanded them, and I sanded the drums. But like I said, I have no idea how, they came with this differential, so I have no idea how old they are. I have new stuff. I just haven't installed it. I'll install it when we're, putting this together for the final time. You notice my brake line there is apart because I found a spot while I was working that this was down at a body shop in Watsonville for about 5 years. So obviously when the guy was working on it, he smashed the brake line. So I'm going to have to repair that at some point. Trying to get that shaft off apart, that cross shaft apart. I thought I might need that 3/16 that line takes, so I removed it so I could move that outside arm all the way to the to the frame rail, and it turned out that's not how it comes apart. That was unnecessary, but it is when I noticed that brake line that's smashed. You see how crooked it is. It's crooked because it's smashed. Anyway, so like I said, I'm pretty happy with that. I made that arm, I made it 2.5 inches longer than the side ones to get some leverage. Pull a little harder with that one than with the two that are actuating the shoes, and it seems like it worked. Made the other bracket that the 2 cables are coming through so that the cables were the same elevation as that longer arm. Had to modify that too. Scott welded that today. The 2 gussets on it. I made the angle out of one piece, but the gussets he welded on there today. So, like I say, there's one step that is done. Check that one off the list, I think. Be ashamed to take this all apart when it comes time to finishing this thing. So anyway, later. Well, good morning. Welcome back to Blue Heinz Garage. Well, we're going to be playing out here today. What is today? Tuesday, September 20th. Got a few things done on this. When I got these coilovers, these new coilovers, The urethane bushings in the top of one of them were acted like they were a little damaged when they got installed because the shock didn't sit straight. If you turned it one way, it lined up, and if you turned it 180 degrees, it was way off. So we did some investigating and found out the bolt going through the top wasn't sitting in there square. Evidently, with the weight of the chassis on there bolted in, I've got new ones. The guy sent me new ones, and the little adjusting nuts on the bottom, the adjusting nuts on the bottom where you tension the spring and do all of those adjustments on that. There's a locking screw that goes. They're split. I guess to make them easier to screw on there or whatever. And then once they're located, you tighten this screw, and what it does is it shrinks the nut onto the threads of the shock so it won't turn. It won't come loose. It won't wind down from vibrations and stuff. The little screws on those nuts weren't there when I got the shock. So the guy sent me new bushings and new nuts for the bottom with the screws included. So that's all taken care of and ready to go. I finished the e-brake modification, got the double cables pulling on that arm, got the arm extended, it's all back together, and it seems to work great. So that's done. So what I'm attempting to do today is to put the bed back onto this. The bed and the fenders I want to put back on here and see how that extra weight affects the springs that we have on the coilovers. We may need to adjust the rating of those springs. Right now they're 220-pound springs. Going to see how the weight of the bed. I'm not sure. I don't have any way of weighing it. I don't have a scale that'll hold that. Feels like it's 300-400 pounds. So we're going to add that on here and see what effect it has on those springs, and then go from there. In the meantime, the Blue Hind sitting here. Last couple of times we drove it. Last time Scott drove it, he said it was running really good, and he went around a corner or did something, and it backfired through the carburetor. It did that to me once too. I'm thinking there's a number of possibilities, but I'm thinking it's a fuel issue, and the fuel that's in this tank, fuel has been added to the tank, but some of the fuel in this tank is probably a year old. So what I'm planning on doing is I have an empty 5-gallon can. I'm going to siphon the tank dry. I think there's probably 5 gallons, maybe a touch more. I'm going to siphon the tank dry and put new fuel in the tank and start there. One of the other potential issues could be the fuel pump. Everything is new on this motor, but that fuel pump was put on that motor when it was originally built, and that's 30 plus years ago. So that's a suspect too. I'm going to start with new fuel in the tank and see how it reacts to that. So that's where I'm beginning today, because I need this out of here. You see the bed is stored right now over here, and the cherry picker is behind it. Well, I need the cherry picker to lift the bed to put it on the truck. The bed's right now rather trapped back there between the car where it is, the lift post, the bed, the Model A, the pickup here. A little tight in here right now. The bed's on a dolly. So I'm thinking if I get the car out of here, the bed will fit in this opening here. And if it don't, I'll lower the Model A and roll it back till it does. I can get the welder moved out from in front of the cherry picker, get the cherry picker out. So that's kind of where we're at with my shop as it sits. You always want these things bigger, and that's how it ends up as you start putting tools and cars and what have you in here. But anyway, I'm going to mess with the fuel in the Blue Hinds, get some new fuel in the tank, run the Blue Hinds into that garage so it's out of here, and then see what I can do about getting the cherry picker unburied and the bed unburied, because if I can do all of that without moving this, I can install the bed with this right where it's at. So that's what we're going to try and do. Anyway, I'll show you more when there's more to show you later. Well, we're started. Blue Heinz is gone. It's over there. Bed is hanging over the top of the chassis. I gotta find some pins of some sort to, some rods or whatever to put in the holes to guide it down where it belongs. So, we're started. Let's see where we go from here. Well, there's beginning. It's back on there. It's bolted onto the chassis. The cradle's taken off. And it went down. The weight of the bed lowered it. Compressed the springs about 3/4 of an inch. So we're still higher than we want to be, I think. I'm going to put the fenders on, and that'll tell everything, because we'll see the gap between the tire and the fender. So that's next. Stay tuned. Okay, well, there it is. What I'm thinking right now is, with the weight of the bed on the chassis, the springs only compressed about 3/4 of an inch, I think. And you see the big gap between the top of the tire and the fender. It's way too big. So I think two things, I mean right now anyway, I think two things need to happen. The springs, I think, are too stiff. I think they need to be 180 pounds, which I think is the next step down. I don't know if they go any lower than that. 180 pounds rated instead of 220, which should make them compress a bit more with the weight of the chassis. And I think I need a taller tire. The next size tire is 2 inches bigger, 2.5 inches bigger in diameter. So that'll give me another 1.25 inches. And if I can get the springs to compress a bit more, I think I'll be about where I was before, and I'm okay with that. My son likes them lower than that, but I think we had about 1.25 inches, 1.5 inches between the top of the tire and the fender before. Now we got 3+, 3.5 maybe. I think it needs to go down about 2 inches. So I'm thinking the lighter rated springs and combined with the taller tire will get me just about where I want to be. So that's where I think that's where we're gonna go. I'll talk to the guy at Alden Coil-over and Alden American and see what he has to say. He might want me to wait until I can actually drive it, which I don't know that I can, because that's going to be too long. I mean, this thing isn't even all together on the first pass yet, and then once that's complete, it needs to go completely apart, do whatever finishes are necessary, finish the welding. The chassis right now is together, but it's only tacked. It needs to be completely welded, taken all apart and completely welded. Body needs to come completely off. Whatever finishing I'm going to do, that's not going to be the final color. At least I'm going to put a coat of black satin on it, no less than that, and probably finish the interior with the old Ford green. You know, the old Ford trucks had, I forgot what, the forest green or some other color like that. I forgot what they call it. So, like I said, I can't wait on the shocks until I can drive it, because that's going to be 2 years, whatever, something. Anyway, that's what it looks like, all back together, temporarily at least. So, I'll show you more when there's more to show you. See you later. Hey, welcome back to Blue Heinz Garage. It is September 30th, Friday. My new coil-over springs from Alden American showed up. These are the 180 pound rated springs that we're going to try on the back of the pickup, on the back of the Model A. So I'm going to try those up there. I'm going to see if I can install those right now and see how it acts. Just as a reference, let me show you what we're starting with. Here's what we're kind of trying to correct with these. You see, sorry, I keep hitting that button while I'm holding this. I showed you what I have here is water on the running board to simulate the weight of the fuel in the tanks, because the tanks are those saddle mounts that go underneath the splash aprons there. Anyway, what we have here between the tire and the fender is roughly 3 inches. Somewhere around 3 inches. We want way less than that. I'm hoping the springs will take up at least 1 inch of that. I can put maybe more, 1.5 inches. And I can use a taller tire. The next size tire to this one will give me another inch in radius, in height. So that will give me about 1 inch, 1/2 inch to 1 inch between the fender and the tire, which is what I'm looking for. So let's try these springs and see what they do. Well, there you go. It's, I don't know, an hour later. I've got the coils changed. It did go down probably 3/4 of an inch. Not what I wanted, but it did go down. And if I stand on the running board, like on this side, and then get off, it's down a little more. So, you know, I'm thinking, to some extent, all springs settle when you put a load on them, I think. So I'm thinking that needs to happen, kind of. So I you know, and obviously need to drive the thing, get it all together, get all the weight on it. It's kind of hard to, but I think we're really close at this point. There is a little adjustment I can do with the preload on the spring. You know, the nut at the bottom that you put tension on the spring with, you adjust the spring with. He said I can go down maybe 1/2 inch with that. You're supposed to put about 1 inch of preload on the spring before you put any weight on it. I could probably take 1/2 inch of that off, so I could adjust a bit, do some fine tuning with that. I did notice that the other side sits higher for some reason. So again, that'll have to get played with, I suppose. But like I said, I got to get it on the ground. I got to get it all together. I think we're pretty close. There is one more step we can go on the springs. From 180 pound, we can go down to 160. But that sounds awful light to me. I'm thinking before I do that, I'd probably want to drive it and see how it feels. I think I mean, you can move it up and down. If you lean on it or jump on it or whatever, it responds. So I think we're in the right place. It feels like we're in the right place. So anyway, thought you'd like to see how it turned out. It was, I think, a little over 3 when we started. It's down a little over 2 now, somewhere in there. It went down 3/4 to 1 inch, depending. You know, it's kind of hard to measure because you're on an arc, both on the wheel and on the fender. But at any rate, that's where we're at. See ya. Bye.